Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta.
And now chapter 23. Why study the Vedanta Sutra?
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta.
Knowledge is information gathered from the scriptures, and science is practical realization of that knowledge. Knowledge is scientific when it is gathered from the scriptures through the bona fide spiritual master. But when it is interpreted by speculation, it is mental concoction. By scientifically understanding the scriptural information through the bona fide spiritual master, one learns, by one's own realization, the actual situation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is different from material manifestations, and it is above the reactions of matter. Unless one scientifically understands the spiritual form of the personality of Godhead, one becomes an impersonalist. The sunshine in itself is illumination, but that illumination is different from the sun. Yet the sun and the sunshine are not differently situated, for without the sun there can be no sunshine, and without sunshine there is no meaning to the word sun. Unless one is freed from the influence of material energy, he cannot understand the Supreme Lord and his different energies. Nor can one who is captivated by the spell of material energy understand the spiritual form of the Supreme Lord. Unless there is realization of the transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no question of love of God. Unless one can realize the transcendental form of the Supreme Lord, he cannot actually attain love of God, and without love of God, there is no perfection in human life. Just as the 5 gross elements of nature, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether, are both within and without all living beings in this world, the Supreme Lord is both inside and outside this existence, and those who are his devotees can realize this. Pure devotees know that they are meant to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that all things that exist can be means by which one can serve the Supreme. Because a devotee has been blessed by the Supreme from within his heart, he can see the Supreme Lord wherever he looks. Indeed, he can see nothing else. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Verse 55, the relationship between the devotee and the Supreme Lord is confirmed as follows. Visrajati Hridayam Nayasya Sakshad Darir Avasya Bihito Pyagoga Nasha Pranaya Rishanaya Ritangri Padma Sabhavati Bhagavata Pradana Ukta, which means, quote, if a person's heart is always tied to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord with the rope of love, the Lord does not leave him. Indeed, even if his remembrance is not perfect, he is to be considered a first-class devotee. Unquote. There is an example of this described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Dasha Skanda, Canto 10, Chapter 30, Verse 4. When the gopis assembled to join the Ras dance with Krishna, Krishna left them. Consequently, the gopis began to chant the holy name of Krishna, and, being overwhelmed with madness, began to inquire about Krishna from the flowers and the creepers in the forest. Krishna is like the sky. He is situated everywhere. By studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we can obtain information about our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, understand the procedure by which the Lord can be attained, and receive the ultimate realization, which is love of Godhead. In explaining to Prakashananda Saraswati how one can achieve the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotional service, Lord Chaitanya quoted a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 14, verse 21, in which the Lord says that He can be realized only through devotional service executed with faith and love. Indeed, it is devotional service alone which purifies the heart of the devotee and elevates him to the ultimate realization by which he, established in faith, renders service unto the Supreme Lord. Even if one is born in a low family, like a family of chandalas or dog-eaters, one can become filled with transcendental symptoms through realization of the supreme stage of love of Godhead. These transcendental symptoms are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 3, verse 31. Smaranta smarayantascha mito gogha haram harim bhaktya samjataya bhaktya vibrat yutpulakam tanum. Which means, quote, when devotees discuss subjects dealing with the Supreme Lord, who can cleanse the heart of his devotee from all kinds of sinful reactions, they become overwhelmed with ecstasy and display different symptoms due to their devotional service. Unquote. The Bhagavatam further states, quote, due to their spontaneous attachment for the Lord, when they chant His holy names, they sometimes cry, sometimes laugh, dance, sing, and so on, not caring for any social convention. Unquote. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, verse 40. We should understand that Srimad Bhagavatam is the real explanation of the Brahma Sutra, and it is compiled by Vyasadeva himself. In the Garuda Purana it is said, Arto yam Brahma Sutranam Bharat Artha Vinirnaya Gayatri Basya Rupo So Vedartha Pari Brimmata Granto Shtadisha Sahasra Srimad Bhagavata Vidha, which means, quote, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the authorized explanation of Brahma Sutra, and it is a further explanation of Mahabharata. It is the expansion of the Gayatri Mantra and the essence of all Vedic knowledge. This Srimad Bhagavatam, containing 18,000 verses, is known as the explanation of all Vedic literature. Unquote. In the very first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the sages of Naimisharanya asked Suta Goswami how one can know the essence of Vedic literature. In answer, Suta Goswami presented Srimad Bhagavatam as the essence of all the Vedas, histories, and other Vedic literatures. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 13, verse 15, it is clearly stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta knowledge, and that one who relishes the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam has no taste for studying any other literature. In the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, the meaning and purpose of the Gayatri Mantra are also described. Quote, I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Truth. Unquote. This is the first introductory verse dealing with the Supreme Truth, which is described in Srimad Bhagavatam as the source of creation, maintenance, and destruction for the cosmic manifestation. Obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, directly indicate Lord Sri Krishna, who is the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. This fact is more explicitly presented later in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva asserts that Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and that all others are either his direct or indirect plenary portions or portions of those portions. Srila Jiva Goswami has later still more explicitly developed this subject in his Krishna Sandarbha, and Brahma, the original living being, has explained Sri Krishna substantially in his treatise Brahma Samhita. The Samaveda also verifies the fact that Lord Sri Krishna is the divine son of Devaki. In his prayer, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam first proposes that Lord Sri Krishna is the primeval Lord, and that if any transcendental nomenclature for the absolute personality of Godhead is to be accepted, it should be the name Krishna, the all-attractive. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has affirmed in many passages that he is the original personality of Godhead, and this was also confirmed by Arjuna, who cited great sages like Narad, Vyas, and many others. In Padma Purana, it is also stated that of the innumerable names of the Lord, the name of Krishna is the principal one. Although the name Vasudeva indicates the plenary portion of the personality of Godhead, and although all the different forms of the Lord are identical with Vasudeva, in this text, Vasudeva principally indicates the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Sri Krishna is always meditated upon by the Paramahamsas, those who are most perfect in the renounced order of life. Vasudeva, or Lord Sri Krishna, is the cause of all causes, and everything that exists is an emanation from him. How this is so is explained in later chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes Srimad Bhagavatam as the spotless Purana because it contains transcendental narrations of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The history of Srimad Bhagavatam is also very glorious. It was compiled by Vyasadeva, who drew from his mature experience of transcendental knowledge under the instruction of Sri Narad Muni, his spiritual master. Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedic literatures, the 4 Vedas, the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutras, the Puranas, and the Mahabharata. Yet he was not satisfied until he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. His dissatisfaction was observed by his spiritual master, and consequently Narad advised him to write on the transcendental activities of the Lord Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna's transcendental activities are specifically described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the canto which is considered to contain the substance of the whole work. One should not approach the 10th canto immediately, but should approach it gradually by developing knowledge of the subject matters first presented. Generally, a philosophical mind is inquisitive to learn of the origin of all creations. When one who is philosophical sees the night sky, he naturally raises questions about the stars, how they are situated, who lives there, etc. All these inquiries are quite natural for a human being, for the human being has a greater developed consciousness than the animals. In answer to such an inquiry, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam says that the Lord is the origin of all creations. He is not only the creator, but the maintainer and annihilator as well. The manifested cosmic creation is created at a certain period by the will of the Lord, is maintained for some time, and is finally annihilated by his will. Thus he is the supreme will behind all activities. Of course, there are atheists of various categories who do not believe in the Creator, but that is due simply to their poor fund of knowledge. The modern scientist creates rockets, and by some arrangement or other, they are thrown into outer space to fly for some time under the control of a scientist far away. All the universes and the innumerable planets within them are similar to such rockets, and they are all controlled by the personality of Godhead. In the Vedic literatures, it is said that the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is the foremost amongst all living personalities. All living beings, from the first created being, Brahma, down to the smallest ant, are individual living entities. Even above Brahma, there are many other living beings with individual capacities. The personality of Godhead himself is also a living being and is as much an individual as the other living beings. However, the Supreme Lord is the supreme living being, and he has the greatest mind and possesses the supermost inconceivable energies in great variety. If a man's mind can produce rockets and spaceships, it is conceivable that a mind higher than man's can produce superior things. A reasonable person will accept this argument, but stubborn, obstinate people will not. Srila Vyasadeva at once accepts the Supreme Mind as the Parameshvar, the Supreme Controller. As stated in Bhagavad Gita and all other scriptures written by Srila Vyasadeva, that Parameshvar is Sri Krishna himself. This is specifically validated in Srimad Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita also, the Lord himself says that there is no Paratattva, or Samam Bonam, superior to himself. Therefore, the author at once worships the Paratattva, Sri Krishna, whose transcendental activities are described in the 10th canto. Unscrupulous people go at once to the 10th canto, especially to the 5 chapters which describe the Lord's Ras dance. However, this portion of Srimad Bhagavatam is the most confidential part of that great literature. Unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, he is sure to misunderstand the Lord's worshipable transcendental pastimes in the Ras dance and the Lord's love affairs with the gopis. This subject matter is highly spiritual and technical, and only liberated personalities who have gradually attained the stage of Paramahamsa can transcendentally relish the worshipable Ras dance. Therefore, Srila Vyasadeva gives the reader a chance to gradually develop in spiritual realization before actually relishing the essence of the pastimes of the Lord. Thus Vyasadeva purposefully invokes the Gayatri Mantra, Dhimahi. This Gayatri Mantra is especially meant for spiritually advanced people. When one attains success in chanting Gayatri Mantra, he can enter into the transcendental position of the Lord. First, however, one must acquire the Brahminical qualities and become perfectly situated in the mode of goodness in order to chant the Gayatri Mantra successfully. From that point, one can begin to transcendently realize the Lord, His name, His fame, His qualities, etc. Srimad Bhagavatam is a narration dealing with the Svarup, or form of the Lord, which is manifested by his internal potency. This potency is distinguished from the external potency which has manifested the cosmic world within our experience. Srila Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the internal and external potencies in the very first verse of the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. In that verse, he says that the internal potency is factual reality, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of the material existence is temporary and illusory, no more real than a mirage in the desert. Water may appear present in a mirage, but real water is somewhere else. Similarly, the manifested cosmic creation appears to be reality, but it is simply a reflection of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there are no mirages. Absolute truth is there. It is not here in the material world. Here, everything is relative truth. One truth seems to depend upon another. This cosmic creation results from an interaction of the three modes of material nature. The temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to the bewildered mind of the conditioned soul. Thus there appear to be so many species of life, including the higher demigods like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, etc. In fact, there is no reality in the manifested world, but there appears to be reality because the true reality exists in the spiritual world, where the personality of Godhead eternally abides with his transcendental paraphernalia. The chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction itself, but it is he only who knows all the nooks and corners of the construction, because everything is carried out under his instructions only. In other words, he knows everything about the construction directly and indirectly. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme engineer of this cosmic creation, knows very well what is happening in every nook and corner of the cosmic creation, although activities appear to be performed by someone else. In actuality, no one is independent in the material creation. The hand of the Supreme Lord is everywhere. All material elements, as well as all spiritual sparks, are but emanations from Him only. Whatever is created in this material world is created by the interaction of the two energies, material and spiritual. These energies belong to the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. A chemist can manufacture water in the laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. But in reality, the living entity can only work under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Indeed, all materials used by a chemist are supplied by the Lord. The Lord knows everything directly and indirectly, and He is cognizant of all the minute details of everything. He is fully independent as well. He can be compared to a gold mine, and the cosmic creations can be compared to ornaments made from that gold, such as gold rings, necklaces, etc. The gold ring and necklace are qualitatively one with the gold in the mine, but quantitatively the gold in the mine and the gold in the earring or necklace are different. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy of the Absolute Truth centers about the fact that the Supreme Lord is simultaneously one with and different from His creation. Nothing is absolutely equal to the Absolute Truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of it. conditioned souls, beginning from Brahma, the engineer of this particular universe, down to an insignificant ant, are all creating something, but none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialist wrongly thinks that there is no creator outside his own good self, and this is called Maya or illusion. Due to his poor fund of knowledge, the materialist cannot see beyond the purview of his imperfect senses. Thus he thinks that matter automatically takes its own shape independent of a conscious background. This is refuted by Srila Vyasadeva in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. As stated before, Vyasadeva is a liberated soul, and he compiled this book of authority after attaining spiritual perfection. Since the complete whole, or the absolute truth, is the source of everything, nothing is independent of him. Everything exists within the body of the absolute truth. Any action or reaction of a part of a body becomes a cognizable fact to the embodied whole. Similarly, if the creation abides in the body of the absolute truth, then nothing is unknown to the absolute directly or indirectly. In the Shruti mantra, it is stated that the absolute whole, or Brahman, is the ultimate source of everything. Everything emanates from him, everything is maintained by him, and at the end, everything enters into him again. That is the law of nature. This is also confirmed in the Smriti mantra. There it is said that at the beginning of Brahma's millennium, the source from which everything emanates is the absolute truth, or Brahman, and at the end of that millennium, the reservoir into which everything enters is that same absolute truth. Material scientists haphazardly take it for granted that the ultimate source of this planetary system is the sun, but they are unable to explain the source of the sun. In Vedic literatures, the ultimate source is explained. Brahma is the creator of this universe, but because he had to meditate in order to receive the inspiration for such a creation, he is not the ultimate creator. As stated in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahma was taught Vedic knowledge by the personality of Godhead. In the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that the Supreme Lord inspired a secondary creator, Brahma, and enabled him to carry out his creative functions. In this way, the Supreme Lord is the supervising engineer. The real mind behind all creative agents is the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna personally admits that it is he only who superintends the creative energy, Prakriti, the sum total of matter. Thus, Sri Vyasadeva neither worships Brahma nor the sun, but the Supreme Lord, who guides both Brahma and the sun in their creative activities. The Sanskrit words abhigya and svarat, appearing in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, are significant. These two words distinguish the Lord from all other living entities. No living entity other than the Supreme Being, the absolute personality of Godhead, is either abhigya or svarat. That is, none of them are either fully cognizant or fully independent. Everyone has to learn from his superior about knowledge. Even Brahma, who is the first living being within this material world, has to meditate upon the Supreme Lord and take help from him in order to create. If Brahma or the sun cannot create anything without acquiring knowledge from a superior, then what is the situation with the material scientists who are fully dependent on so many things? Modern scientists like Jagadish Chandra Bose, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, etc., may be very boastful of their respective creative energies, but all were dependent on the Supreme Lord for so many things. After all, the highly intelligent brains of these gentlemen were certainly not products of any human being. The brain is created by another agent. If brains like those of Einstein or Newton could have been manufactured by a human being, then mankind would produce many such brains instead of eulogizing their passing. If such scientists cannot even manufacture such brains, what to speak of foolish atheists who defy the authority of the Lord? Even the Mayavadi impersonalists who flatter themselves and believe that they have become the Lord themselves are not abhigya or svarat, fully cognizant or fully independent. The Mayavadi monists undergo a severe process of austerity and penance to acquire knowledge of becoming one with the Lord. But ultimately, they become dependent on some rich follower who supplies them with requisite paraphernalia to construct great monasteries and temples. Atheists like Ravan and Hiranyakashipu had to undergo severe penances before they could flout the authority of the Lord. But ultimately, they were so helpless that they could not save themselves when the Lord appeared before them as cruel death. This is also applicable to the modern atheists who dare flout the authority of the Lord. Such atheists will be dealt the same awards as were given in the past to great atheists like Ravan and Hiranyakashipu. History repeats itself, and what was occurring in the past will recur again and again when there is necessity. Whenever the authority of the Lord is neglected, the penalties dealt by the laws of nature are always there. That the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is all-perfect is confirmed in all Shruti mantras. It is said in the Shruti mantras that the all-perfect Lord glanced over matter and thus created all living beings. The living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord, and He impregnates the vast material nature with the seeds of the spiritual sparks. Thus the creative energies are set in motion for so many wonderful creations. When one atheist argued that God is no more expert than the manufacturer of a subtle watch, which has so many delicate parts, we had to reply that God is a greater mechanic than the watchmaker because He simply creates one machine in male and female forms, and the male and female forms go on producing innumerable similar machines without the further attention of God. If a man could manufacture a set of machines capable of producing other machines without the man giving the matter any further attention, then a man could be said to equal the intelligence of God. Of course, this is not possible. Each and every one of man's imperfect machines has to be handled individually by a mechanic. Because no one can be equal in intelligence to God, another name for God is asamordha, which indicates that no one is equal to or greater than Him. Everyone has his intellectual equal and superior, and no one can claim that he has neither. However, this is not the case with the Lord. The Shruti mantras indicate that before the creation of the material universe, the Lord was existing, and He was master of everyone. It was the Lord who instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge. That personality of Godhead has to be obeyed in all respects. Anyone who wants to become freed from material entanglement must surrender unto Him, and this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, it is certain that one will be bewildered, even if he happens to be a great mind. Only when great minds surrender unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva and know fully that Vasudeva is the cause of all causes, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 19, can they become Mahatmas, or truly broad-minded. However, such broad-minded Mahatmas are rarely seen. Only they, however, can understand the Supreme Lord as the absolute personality of Godhead, the primeval cause of all creations. He is Parama, ultimate truth, because all other truths are dependent on him. Because he is the source of all knowledge, he is omniscient. There is no illusion for him as there is for the relative knower. Some Mayavadi scholars argue that Srimad Bhagavatam was not compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, and some suggest that the book is a modern creation written by someone named Vopadev. In order to refute this meaningless argument, Srila Sridhar Swami points out that there are many of the oldest Puranas which make reference to the Srimad Bhagavatam. The first shloka, or verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, begins with the Gayatri Mantra, and there is reference to this in the Matsya Purana, the oldest Purana. With reference to the context of Gayatri Mantra in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in this Purana it is said that there are many narrations and spiritual instructions beginning with Gayatri Mantra. For instance, the history of Vritrasura is found in the Gayatri Mantra. Whoever makes a gift of this great work on a full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life and goes back to Godhead. There is also reference to Srimad Bhagavatam in other Puranas, which even indicate that the work consists of 12 cantos and 18,000 shlokas. In Padma Purana also, there is reference about the Srimad Bhagavatam during a conversation between Gautama and Maharaj Ambarish. Maharaj Ambarish was advised to read Srimad Bhagavatam regularly if he at all desired liberation from material bondage. Under these circumstances, there is no doubt regarding the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. For the past 500 years, many scholars have made elaborate commentaries upon Srimad Bhagavatam and have displayed unique scholarship. The serious student will do well to attempt to go through them in order to more happily relish the transcendental messages of the Bhagavatam. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with original and pure sex psychology, Ariras, devoid of all mundane inebriety. The entire material world turns due to the basic principle of sex life. In modern human civilization, sex is the central point of all activities. Indeed, wherever we turn our face, we see sex life prominent. Consequently, sex life is not unreal. Its true reality is experienced in the spiritual world. Material sex is but a perverted reflection of the original. The original is found in the Absolute Truth. This validates the fact that the Absolute Truth is personal. For the Absolute Truth cannot be impersonal and have a sense of pure sex life. The impersonal monist philosophy gives an indirect impetus to abominable, mundane sex because it overly stresses the impersonality of the ultimate truth. The result is that men who lack knowledge have accepted the perverted material sex life as all in all, because they have no information of the actual spiritual form of sex. There is a distinction between sex in the diseased condition of material life and sex in the spiritual existence. Srimad Bhagavatam gradually elevates the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence, above the three modes of material activities, fruitive actions, speculative philosophy, and above worship of functional deities indicated in the Vedas. Srimad Bhagavatam is the embodiment of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and is therefore situated in a position superior to other Vedic literatures. Religion includes 4 primary subjects. 1. Pious activities. 2. Economic development. 3. Satisfaction of the senses. And 4. Liberation from material bondage. Religious life is distinguished from the irreligious life of barbarism. Indeed, it may be said that human life actually begins with religion. The 4 principles of animal life, eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, are common both to the animals and human beings, but religion is the special concern of human beings. Since human life is no better than animal life without religion, in real human society there is some form of religion aiming at self-realization and referring to one's eternal relationship with God. In the lower stage of human civilization, there is always competition between men in their attempt to dominate material nature. In other words, there is continuous rivalry in an attempt to satisfy the senses. Thus, driven by sense gratificatory consciousness, men enact religious rituals. Thus, pious activities and religious functions are performed with an aim to acquire some material gain. And if such material gain is obtainable in another way, this so-called religion is neglected. This can be seen in modern human civilization. Since the economic desires of the people appear to be fulfilled in another way, no one is interested in religion now. The churches, mosques, and temples are practically vacant, for people are more interested in factories, shops, and cinemas. Thus they have deserted the religious places erected by their forefathers. This is evidence that religion is generally performed for the sake of economic development, and economic development is required for sense gratification. When one is baffled in his attempt to attain sense gratification, he takes to the cause of salvation in order to become one with the Supreme Whole. All these activities arise with the same aim in view, sense gratification. In the Vedas, the 4 primary subjects mentioned above are prescribed in a regulative way so that there will not be undue competition for sense gratification. However, Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all the sense-gratifying activities of the material world. It is a pure transcendental literature, understandable by the devotees of the Lord who are above competition in sense gratification. In the material world, there is keen competition between animals, men, communities, and even nations in an attempt to gratify the senses. But the devotees of the Lord are above all this. Devotees have no need to compete with materialists because they are on the path back to Godhead, back home where everything is eternal, full, and blissful. Such transcendentalists are 100% non-envious and are therefore pure in heart. Because everyone in the material world is envious, there is competition. The devotees of the Lord are not only free from all material envy, but they are also kind to everyone in an attempt to establish a competitionless society with God in the center. The socialists' idea of a society devoid of competition is artificial because even in the socialist states there is competition for power. It is a fact that the principle of sense gratification is the basic principle of materialistic life, and this can be realized either from reading the Vedas or simply from observing common human activities. The Vedas recommend fruitive activities by which people can advance to higher planets, and they also recommend worship of the various demigods for the purpose of attaining their planets. Ultimately, the Vedas recommend activities by which one can reach the absolute truth and realize his impersonal feature in order to become one with him. However, the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth is not the last word. Above the impersonal feature is the Paramatma, or the Supersoul, and above that is the Supreme Personality. Srimad Bhagavatam gives information about the personal qualities of the Absolute Truth, qualities which are beyond the impersonal aspect. Topics concerning these qualities are greater than topics of impersonal philosophical speculation. Consequently, Srimad Bhagavatam is given higher status than the Jnana-kanda portions of the Vedas. Srimad Bhagavatam is also greater than the Karma-kanda and Upasana-kanda portions as well, because it recommends the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the Divine Son of Vasudeva. The Karma-kanda portion of the Vedas is fraught with competition to reach heavenly planets for better sense gratification, and this competition is also seen in the Jnana-kanda and Upasana-kanda portions. Srimad Bhagavatam is above all of these because it aims only at the supreme truth, the substance or root of all categories. In other words, from Srimad Bhagavatam, we can know the substance as well as the relativities in their true sense and perspective. The substance is the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the relativities are the different forms of energy which emanate from Him. Since the living entities are also related to His energies, there is nothing really different from the substance. At the same time, the energies are different from the substance. In the material sense, this conception is self-contradictory, but Srimad Bhagavatam explicitly deals with this aspect of simultaneous oneness and difference. This philosophy is also found in the Vedanta Sutra, beginning with the Janmadhyasya Sutra. Knowledge of the simultaneous oneness and difference found in the Absolute Truth is imparted for the well-being of everyone. Mental speculators mislead people by establishing the energy of the Lord as absolute. But when the truth of simultaneous oneness and difference is understood, the imperfect concepts of monism and dualism cease to satisfy. By understanding the Lord's simultaneous oneness with and difference from His creation, one can immediately attain freedom from the threefold miseries: miseries inflicted by the body and mind, by other living entities, and by acts of nature. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the surrender of the living entity unto the Absolute Person. This surrender is made with clear consciousness and awareness of the devotee's oneness with the Absolute, and at the same time of his eternal position of servitorship. In the material conception, one thinks himself to be the Lord of all he surveys. Consequently, he is always troubled by the threefold miseries of life. As soon as one comes to know his real position in transcendental service, he at once becomes freed from all these miseries. The position of servitor is wasted in the material conception of life. In an attempt to dominate material nature, the living entity is forced to offer his service to relative material energy. When this service is transferred to the Lord in pure consciousness of spiritual identity, the living entity at once becomes free from the encumbrances of material affection. Over and above this, Srimad Bhagavatam is the personal commentary on Vedanta Sutra made by Vyasadeva when he had attained maturity in spiritual realization. He was able to write it by the help of Narad's mercy. Vyasadeva is also an incarnation of Narayan, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, there is no question about his authority. Although he is the author of all Vedic literature, he specifically recommends the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. In other Puranas, various methods for worshipping demigods are mentioned, but in Srimad Bhagavatam, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is mentioned. The Supreme Lord is the total body, and the demigods are different parts of that body. Thus, if one worships the Supreme Lord, he need not worship the demigods, for the Supreme Lord is in the hearts of all demigods. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distinguished Srimad Bhagavatam from all other Puranas by recommending it as the spotless Purana. The method by which the transcendental message is received is the method of submissive hearing. A challenging attitude cannot help one receive or realize the transcendental message. Therefore, in the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, the word shushrushu is used. This word indicates that one should be anxious to hear the transcendental message. The desire to hear with interest is the primary qualification for assimilating transcendental knowledge. Unfortunately, many people are not interested in patiently hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. The process is simple, but the application difficult. Those who are unfortunate will find time to hear ordinary social and political topics, but when they are invited to attend an assembly to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, they are reluctant to attend. Sometimes people indulge in hearing portions of Srimad Bhagavatam, which they are not prepared to hear. Professional readers of the Bhagavatam indulge in reading the confidential portions dealing with the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. These portions appear to read like sex literature. However, Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to be heard from the beginning, and those who are fit to assimilate the messages of Bhagavatam are mentioned in the very beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Verse 2. A bona fide audience fit to hear Srimad Bhagavatam is generated after many pious deeds. An intellectual person can believe in the assurances of the great sage Vyasadeva and patiently hear the messages of Srimad Bhagavatam in order to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. one need not struggle through the different Vedic stages of realization, for one can be lifted to the position of Paramahamsa simply by agreeing to hear the message of Srimad Bhagavatam with patience. The sages of Naimisharanya told Sutta Goswami that they were intensely desirous of understanding Srimad Bhagavatam. They were hearing from Sutta Goswami about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they were never satiated by these discussions. People who are really attached to Krishna never want to stop hearing about him. Lord Chaitanya therefore advised Prakashananda Saraswati, always read Srimad Bhagavatam and try to understand each and every verse. Then you will actually understand Brahma Sutra. You say that you are very anxious to study Vedanta Sutra, but you cannot understand Vedanta Sutra without understanding Srimad Bhagavatam. He also advised Prakashananda Saraswati to always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And by doing so, you will very easily be liberated. After liberation, you will be eligible to achieve the highest goal of life, love of Godhead. The Lord then recited many verses from authoritative scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and Nrsinga Tapani. In particular, he quoted the following verse from Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Na Shochati Na Kangshati Samasaveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Labhate Param, which means, quote, one who is transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. Unquote. From the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 54. When a person reaches this Brahma Bhuta platform, he sees all living entities equally and becomes a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. In the Nrsinga Tapani 2.5.16, it is said that when a person is actually liberated, he can understand the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord and thus engage in his devotional service. Lord Chaitanya also quoted a verse from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, verse 9, in which Shukdev Goswami admits that although he was elevated to the liberated stage and free from the clutches of Maya, he was still attracted by the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Consequently, he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Vyasadeva. Lord Chaitanya also quoted another shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 15, verse 43, dealing with the Kumaras. When the Kumaras entered the temple of the Lord, they were attracted by the aroma of flowers and tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord with pulp of sandalwood. Simply by smelling the aroma of these offerings, the minds of the Kumaras turned to the service of the Supreme Lord, despite the fact that the Kumaras were already liberated souls. It is stated elsewhere in Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, verse 10, that even if one is a liberated soul and is actually free from material contamination, he can still, without cause, become attracted to the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Thus, God is so attractive, and because He is so attractive, He is called Krishna. In this way, Lord Chaitanya discussed the Atmaram verse from Srimad Bhagavatam with Prakashananda Saraswati. Lord Chaitanya's admirer, the Maharashtriya Brahmin, related that the Lord explained this verse in 61 different ways. Everyone assembled was very eager to hear the different versions of the Atmaram Shloka again. And since they were so eager, Lord Chaitanya again explained the shloka in the same way that he had explained it to Sanatan Goswami. Everyone who heard the explanations of the Atmaram shloka was amazed. Indeed, everyone considered Lord Chaitanya to be none other than Sri Krishna himself.